Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Silver Sunday, hosted by Barb Kaelberg.
Oh my God. Okay. Hi, everybody. Roland and Curtis are busy tonight. It's Valentine's, so we have a kind of a short crew. I know. And we're going to go around right now and introduce ourselves. So I'm going to start up here with Aaron.
I am the one right next to her. Yeah, I am the penciler on Fire Rush, which I think the second issue is coming out soon. And I have just started design stuff on a new comic I'm doing for Silverline that I'm pretty excited about. So just started doing design-wise, which means my brain is half here, half there tonight, because I'm always percolating stuff in my back of my head. Design stuff sometimes. This flusters me. And then I do my own comic books. So I'll be doing 2 comic books at the same time. Well, wish me luck on this one, which is called Goblins, which is on Webtoons.
So your brain's running on several tracks.
Yes, all at once.
Just wait till it jumps the track, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, that it is.
All right, Tim.
I thought that was normal.
Yeah, it is
For
for
me,
me.
it is.
I am Tim TK. I'm the associate editor at Silverline, and I help manage our craft blog series. I'm also the writer/creator on Wolf Hunter, and I am also a frequent streamer at the Twitch channel Agro Bacon. And I've been told last week that I'm the unofficial voice of Silverline thanks to my ability to scream.
How about you, John?
This is the wrong week for all that. I'm John Martin. I am the inker on Fire Rush and on Wolf Hunter. That one that he says he wrote. Yeah.
Yes.
Things
look so good.
I've also done work for Upper Deck Dynamite. I guess you could say Upper Deck Marvel because it was for Marvel, but for Upper Deck. And I'm kind of currently trying to hash out a cover real quick for Fire Rush number 2.
Okay. How about you, Roberta?
Hi, I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm a former colorist at Malibu Comics in the 90s, and currently I am working on Silverline titles, the Silverline Team Up, Champion and Miss Fury, and the Cat and Mouse book.
Yay! And I am Barbara Kjellberg. I am tonight's hostess, and this is my first time hostessing, so if I screw up, please don't tease me. I am also a CFO for Silverline Comics, inker on Cat and Mouse, creator, inker, and colorist, and co-writer on Divinity. And I'm also coloring Sirens, which is an older book that we're going to be renewing. So tonight's topic, because it's Valentine's Day, we're going to do a show on romance in comics. And can anybody tell me who really brought romance comics into the forefront? Who really made a splash with it?
You're talking about like back in the they were real
Back in the
big
day, back in
back
the
in
day.
the
A little
50s,
little bit of history here.
little 40s and 50s.
Who introduced it as a big mainstream seller?
Wasn't it Marvel Comics?
So far, you're good.
Yeah, I thought it was because then Marvel went to superheroes. I'm not gonna. Is it Stan Lee?
Close. Shortly after World War II, the superhero comics kind of fell out of favor because everybody was like so done with them because the war was over and everybody was looking for something new. And so comics kind of started to fall off. So DC and Marvel were looking to bring other genres in to try to prop up failing sales. So they started like sci-fi and horror and westerns,
Yeah, westerns are big.
crime, and Joe Simon and Jack Kirby actually.
I was gonna say Jack Kirby.
Yep,
Darn instincts.
they brought in their flagship romance comic, Young Romance, and it took off like a rocket because people were, after the war, they were all happy and, wanted a little excitement, and that romances seemed to do it.
Yeah.
But then around the early 70s, free love and everything like that. And this was, the comics code was in effect. So you had to maintain a very decorum type of writing in comics. And
those squares.
Yeah, it fell off because nobody was interested in the 50s type of romance.
Right. They had to be very
circumspect,
family friendly. I guess you could say romance. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, romance. It's funny because most people think American comics started or got big because of superhero comics. And that's not the case. I mean, there was like crime, romance. Those that really made it. Superheroes were a niche to comics.
I mean, DC was really just Detective Comics. Like,
yeah,
Batman took him to be heard of that, but it was a whole slew of hard-boiled detective.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, superheroes were big during World War II because we needed our heroes,
right?
And it was all patriotism and everything like that. But after the war was over, people didn't want to think about it anymore. They wanted something new and different, and there was a lot of niches to fill.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the Old West comics. I think Old West comics are almost on par with romance comics as far as sales. I think they were the other one that were really, really big.
What was one of
romance comics were really huge. And people say, like, were they big? It's like, yeah, they were big until they fell out of favor. Yeah.
Until the sexual revolution,
Yeah. And what you think with the day now, with the absence of the Comics Code Authority, I mean, we gave that up, what now, 6-7 years ago? Has it been longer that we finally got rid of the Comics Code?
Something like that, but it seems like longer than that we were really pushing the envelope. I mean,
yeah.
We were doing it in the 90s.
Yeah, if you look at after the 98 reboot, when Marvel kind of had to rebrand himself, like, hey, what if murder was just a regular occurrence?
or even outfits, I mean, they were really pushing the envelopes, basically 2 Band-Aids and a cork, so.
Yeah. The cork was taped.
Hey, that's a good idea. Wait, what? I found that there's a new costume idea. Some electrical tape.
Believe it or not, I didn't come up with that saying. My father used to say that. She's wearing basically nothing but 2 Band-Aids and a cork. But I think that romance has always been a really big part of comics, even though we kind of got away from romance comics. Speaking of which, I have done one. Paul Kupperberg has recently brought back romance comics, and I've done some of that.
Strange enough, romance comics are big, just the manga. I think it's Yaoi romance comics. So the demand is there. American comics just either haven't been able to nail it, or they haven't really taken advantage of it. I think it's because, if you go to the manga side, it's huge.
I think because we've kind of opened up whatever trade barriers were there, and the manga market is so much bigger in America now that it's been more profitable for businesses to kind of just co-op and get distribution deals with Japanese printers, and just they'll have distribution in the United States.
Right.
So I mean, all of the big four have some sort of manga partner, and then other indies too as well.
Yeah.
Do you think romance in comics is more prevalent outside of the United States?
I think so.
It could
I
be,
think
yeah.
even European stuff, even if you look at European like fantasy comics,
Mm-hmm.
there's usually a romance in the story. I mean, most American comics, even in the superhero and adventure stories, there's hardly any romance. I'm not saying there's none. There is some.
There's something in there that's used more as like the B or C story, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Plot line.
we can get into the whole why superheroes blew back up and all the different economic crises that led to that resurgence. But
Right.
other countries, I feel like it serves more as an A story to have the romance, and then any sort of fantastical elements take the background to that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I mean, look at Star Wars, the most,
Yeah.
romance, Han Solo and Princess Leia. I mean, and is there a need for romance comics? Well, Strangers in Paradise,
Mm.
that was huge, and I think ElfQuest was big because of the romance. I mean, if you take the romance out of ElfQuest, I mean, there's still a quest there, but that was a huge component of that story. So I think romance is still in demand. Either American comics are not willing to pull the plug, or they don't really know what to do. But every time I've seen romance stories that are well written come in, they become popular. I mean, at least I read them.
What's your favorite romantic storyline, Roberta?
Oh, well, I always followed Elektra and Daredevil. 'cause
Oh
they're
yeah.
Crazy.
Iconic couple.
Yeah, iconic. I mean, she dies. He's crazy. They're on, they're off. I think
Well,
one of the major threads of interest in that storyline was just the push and the pull of those two.
Yeah.
and of course, I think the all-time first couple of comics would have to be Clark Kent and Lois Lane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, do you guys think, when did they jump the shark in that romance?
You mean when did they get rid of it or whatever? You mean?
Well, when do you think that whole storyline ever jumped the shark? All right, let's put it this way. You know what UST is, right? Unresolved sexual tension, or the
Mhm.
moonlighting
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
Don't you agree that it's more interesting in comics to have this long buildup of unresolved sexual tension, and then once the guy gets the girl, a lot of people lose interest. They think it's jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV shows a classic
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You know.
true.
But comics, it's like you're gonna have to pull the trigger eventually, and that's a fine line, because it's like, how long do you push that tension before, or people just get tired of it and like, okay, we
Yeah.
don't care.
I think, well, we kind of talked about that a little bit on the Wednesday show, but I think the main issue we had with it was actually that they let Lois's character stagnate. She can only show up to the scoop so many times and have Superman rescue her so many times before that storyline happens, and then after they get together, and that storyline continues to happen, and
Yeah.
it took a while for Lois to have any sort of agency. So I think it was always fun to have UST, and then at some point you switch out writers or whatever, and they say to make a change and resolve that. There needs to be some sort of other character development to have the love interest also be as interesting to develop that, to warrant that extra time on page.
Yeah.
Also,
He's-
Tommy Kasisi say hi, and Tommy's calling me a traitor.
Yeah, but like a day trader, not like a trader.
Yeah, he told me
like,
traitor. Yeah,
yeah. That's what he meant.
I meant that game stonk.
Games. It's funny. I remember. I think it might have been Joe Quesada was doing an interview about Spider-Man when they did the New Day. I think it's New Day or something, where they undid his marriage to Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And it was something like, because when he finally married Mary Jane, like the interest lowered or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so they split it up again to add that will they, won't they get back together. It's a question. Can romance stories, can they work in an ongoing serialized, storytelling like comics? I think they can, but most romance stories, I mean, you want to see the ending. I mean, does he get with the girl or not? And then that ends. I mean, because like you said, once somebody gets together in a serialized comic, what else can you really do with that except break them up again?
Right.
And yet there are exceptions, because from the very beginning, Reed Richards and was always together with
Sue Storm.
Sue Storm.
Yeah.
You know, and they weren't married at the beginning, but they have been married for so long. They're like the quintessential married couple in
Yeah.
comics, and they work.
Yeah.
But then you get somebody that's really popular, and I think half the fun is the person they're romancing doesn't know that they have a secret identity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also the Fantastic Four, I think also, I mean, since they're more of a family unit, do you think the family, I mean, at the different, not so much like, I think there's romantic love, but more like family love. And sometimes, like when people think of Fantastic Four, like Reed Richards and them are married because it's a family, it's that family aspect. And I wonder if you take away the family
Hmm.
aspect and put it back in the romantic, then you eventually have to break them up again. Like people, like, well, of course you want them to be together. They're a family. But
Yeah.
if a couple's together romantically, then how do you, you want some sort of drama or something.
Yeah. Not to bring back to Marvel because we did that a ton on Wednesday, but Cassisi in chat says Jean Grey and Wolverine.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
prefer Wolverine and Storm over Wolverine and Jean Grey
Mhm.
because it just seemed like more natural.
yeah.
I quit reading the X-Men after Claremont ended a while after that. So didn't Scott get together with like Emma Frost for a while?
Yes, he. So I actually I read a bit of Claremont, but I really got into X-Men with Lobdell and Brubaker, which is heresy
Okay,
for
yeah.
some people. But um, the relationship with Jean Grey, which has been brought back, kind of like what Barbara's saying, I think they do a really good job of having the stagnation be broken once they pull the trigger and
Mhm.
making them a couple, because Jean Grey either has the potential of going full nuclear if the Phoenix Force ever comes back to Earth, or
Yeah.
in the current setup, they give him that family dynamic because Cable is back and he's younger, timeline, whatever. But they have a full family dynamic where it's the Summers family, and it's, well, they need to stay together because they have this family to take care of in addition to superhero
Yeah.
duties.
But if you
I've
do,
been
but if you look online, like Scott Summers and Emma Frost is one of the most hated couples out there.
Mhm.
I think they're just
I love it because it doesn't make sense, but it does, because the whole thing was Emma's like, I'm borderline evil, so if you go above me, you're going too far, Scott.
yeah. I just know they got together. Like I said, I never read much of the romance.
Mhm.
And I just took it as like that's the opposite effect of like the straight guy and he likes the bad girl.
Yeah.
That the opposites attract. That's what I took the idea. But I always liked the Colossus and Kitty Pryde romance, which is rarely
They're
touched
so
upon in the
yeah,
comics.
they're great.
Yeah, they kind of touch on them here and there, but not really. They're kind of in the
Well,
background.
there was. I mean, how old was Colossus when he met Kitty?
Kitty was like a teenager. Colossus, I
Yeah,
would say,
that was
mid-20s.
It's right after him and Ileana essentially escaped the circus. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Colossus liked the idea of possibly corrupting a minor. Maybe, I don't know.
No.
She was young. She was supposed to be
Yeah,
like
she was young.
Yeah.
She was like 13 or 14.
Yeah, and they kind of go on and off. It's funny. I've been reading I haven't read X-Men comics in years. I'm reading Hickman's
Oh yeah.
run, and this thing. I mean, I like it, and the one thing that's weird though, it's still weird to see the characters the same age. Like I read one with Kitty Pryde. It's like she's still the same age, and they could talk about.
No, she's
That's
not.
comics. That's just comics for
Yeah.
you. But it still seems weird when it's like, well, now what's our future going to be like? And I'm thinking back of all the stories I've read on her, and she's like, she's had what, 10, 20 years worth of stories.
I think
And
they've
she still
aged
looks
her.
that young.
I think they've aged Kitty Pryde some.
A little
So-
bit,
yeah,
yeah. I think she just has a young
she's
look
an
to her.
adult now. She's
Yeah,
an adult
She's
now.
been an adult for a while, but yeah, when Colossus came to the United States, he was like 18 or 19, and essentially he's supposed to be like a senior in high school, and then
Was that what it is? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Did you guys ever talk about the Rogue Gambit romance that's been on and off? They've been doing that for years. I think they've been.
I just
They
appreciate
hooked
how
up
like
finally.
the one note Barb gave us at the start was, you guys talked a lot about Marvel, and here we are.
Well,
Yeah.
the only
All right,
ones
so
I know,
Superman
like,
and Wonder
I
like
know,
I said,
and I didn't say we couldn't talk about
Sure.
Marvel. I just said
Yeah.
I wanted to cover other aspects
Yes.
besides Marvel.
It's just I've made it very jokingly apparent that X-Men is my second religion to Star Wars.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've read the X-Men for years. The only other now I have lots of romance in comics, but I don't know if you guys. I mean, there's You guys don't read Appleseed, do you?
I watched
No,
it.
but talk about it.
Talk
Go
about
ahead and
it.
talk about it.
Dunan and Barrios, and I never could say his last name right. Barrios.
Yeah, I watched the adaptation.
He's a cyborg, and they've had a romance going. And from what I've gathered from the books, I think he has all his functioning organs. But she's the point man, and I think he's the backup military wise. And they've been on and off forever.
So he's fully functional.
He was human. Because you wondered that because he was actually in World War III, and he was actually hurt, and they rebuilt him. So he's all his internal organs and brains, but he's pretty much like a cyborg. But he's not metal. His skin is not metal. It's like a sort of rubber, sort of like
test
almost
tubey.
hot to the touch. Yeah, it's not supposed. If you see him, so he actually can eat and stuff. But you do wonder if all of his organs are. And I think they did say that he is functional, so they can consummate a romance, not just have the romance there. Which is kind of a big deal sometimes. I mean, what was the thing? Even in war movies, all the guys always worry about losing their reproductive organs because, I mean, you want to have kids. I mean, that could take away your ability to have kids. So yeah.
I never. What?
I mean,
All right,
I must be watching the wrong war movies.
You never seen that, like in Band of Brothers and stuff?
No.
Yeah.
Did you ever seen the scene where he gets shot and he's all like, and one guy's like checking him over. He's like, "Don't worry." He tears off his pants, like, "Don't worry, it's all intact." And the guy's like, "Okay, thank you." Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that was always a worry. But that's one of the romance I grew up with is Dunan and Barrios. Yeah, but he quit this. It was supposed to be 10 volumes long, but he got to half the volume 5 and he quit. He didn't do it anymore.
How about Bone?
What?
How about Bone?
Bone. Unrequited love between Bone and
and a human.
Oh yeah.
Cross species there. Bone.
I think she should have gone for it. I mean, why not?
It's an interdimensional relationship. Let's call it that.
Well, it was so funny because they never. I always thought it was so weird that they put like humans in there, and the phone bones look like cartoon characters, like they kind of were.
And it's
like,
perfectly normal.
Yeah, and they didn't have. I mean, Phone Bone was actually he didn't wear any clothes, but then like Phony Bone wore a shirt, and then like I think Smiley Bone wore a vest, and that was it. And they never showed any female Bones, so I had no idea if they even had female versions of Bones. I don't think he ever.
They're like dwarves.
Yeah. And he never showed Boneville too. He said like they said, "You ever going to?" And he's like, "No, it'll never be as impressive as the people think it is. So I'm never going to show it." He just talked about it. But what was it? Was Thorn, right? Wasn't that
Thorn?
Thorn, yeah. So, and they
he
got
was,
the.
He was Thorn.
Oh God, that was a great romance. Didn't she end up meeting like a prince or something that she actually? It's been a while since I've read Bone in a while. I have like one of the actual hardbacks that was like only 1,000 or made. It's my little, so I don't read it that much. I either buy another version, so I keep that safe.
There's also the quintessential triangle of Archie and Betty and Veronica.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of the thing that was so fun about that was that he couldn't make up his mind. So there was always these, and the weird thing was Betty and Veronica palled around. They were friends, and like they're all in love with the same guy. It's weird.
Yeah.
They're both in love with the same guy, and he can't make up his mind. I think I would have been a little pissed off by myself, but
I did read a comic called Sunstone that was pretty good romance wise, little BDSM in it, but it was a romance comic. First, I think it did 2 volumes. Or the first
it's an Image comic.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy who does it. He's done a lot of Marvel stuff now. The artist who does it, I can't remember his name.
I can't pronounce it, so don't.
Yeah. I'm actually going through and thinking about because I actually do read a lot of comics that have romance in them, and I read a lot of non. I think.
All right, let me throw out some couples, and everybody gets to comment on them. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your impression of Clark Kent and Lois Lane?
I prefer Clark Kent and Wonder Woman.
See, now that's a really hated couple.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it actually makes more sense.
Yeah.
How about you, Roberta?
Well, I think I wish she could do more. I think I, you know, like you were alluding to, that there was kind of a played outness to the amount of storyline that they could give her with the scenario of what she's interested in.
She's the
Yeah.
continual damsel in distress.
I would like to have seen her decide to have a little bit of change in her life to be a couple with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So I think I was disappointed in that couple.
Yeah.
So would you have preferred Clark and Wonder Woman, or Superman and Wonder Woman?
I don't know. Maybe I just wish she was a little bit more interesting.
I think I have the same problem as Roberta's. I wish I get Lois. I just wish she had a little more agency.
Yeah.
I just wish Lois did more other than need to be rescued. And
yeah, she's a little one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Which is why Wonder Woman works so much better in that in having a relationship with the most powerful man in DC, because then she's not that thing he has to worry about.
Yeah.
She's that one who's actually got his back, which is why when you look at her, how she's got his back in the Injustice universe or alternate reality of the things, they're pretty badass.
Do you ever think it would have been interesting if they would have had a Kryptonian female survivor that he got with? Would that have been something you guys would be on board with? That way they're technically matched.
If she maybe
Nah.
if she was doing her own thing, maybe.
Because I think like all the other Kryptonians on Earth, aren't they all related to his Superman in some way or another?
I think she's the only one that has a tie to Earth. So if you had someone that's Kryptonian, they might want to do something else.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, next one. Black Canary and Green Arrow.
Yeah.
Black Canary's wasting her time.
And why's that?
It's Green Arrow.
We had some strong
He's a leprechaun Hawkeye.
He's a leprechaun Hawkeye. He's actually the straight up Errol Flynn version of the Archers.
Yeah.
He's a wannabe Robin Hood.
He is Robin Hood.
So who should Black Canary be with then?
Wonder Woman?
Oh,
I'm just thinking John's like everything's Wonder Woman. Just keep that in your answer for everything.
Keeps coming back to Wonder Woman.
But why does she have to be with anybody?
True.
Well, they're one of the main quintessential couples in the comics. They've been written together for like ages.
She's a better fighter, and she's actually got a power. All he does is drag her down.
All right. So why does it have to be about the power? Why can't they just simply love each other?
Does Oliver actually really love anything?
Now I need to work on a nihilist version of Green Arrow for John. But yeah, I of the DC couples, they're the exception of like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I think they're the one I get the most. Simply because they both have kind of the similar-ish baggage, and they don't need to save each other. They work well together, but they can do their own things, and they each have their own motivations. There's agency on both sides, and so when it's together, it's not as, oh god, they have to save this person again.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next couple was Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn.
I didn't even know they were a couple. So I'll let you guys
Yeah,
answer
they're a
this.
couple.
Yeah,
They're a couple.
After everyone, after all the Hot Topic kids made DC make Harley Quinn a hero, and then they finally listened to the criticism on Harley Quinn and Joker being
extremely abusive,
one of the worst possible relationships for anyone to be in. Like, what if this happened? And everyone's like, Yes, actually, thank you. They come in with similar baggage, but they're not beholden to that baggage, and they both walk in that
They're
same sort of
actually
moral gray
But it
area.
gives them a lot more in common.
Yeah,
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're a little protective of each other.
yeah. They're very adorable in their non giant mallet vine whippy moments.
Yeah, they have layers.
Yeah,
And
there's
I was always kind of freaked out at how popular Joker and Harley Quinn were. It was like, you're
it's weird.
it's a sick relationship, and you guys are like, yay!
Well, it's basically a Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde's
Mhm.
infamous for being a criminal couple. That's literally, to me, that's what I saw
Right.
the Joker and Harley Quinn is a Bonnie and Clyde thing.
I feel like that's what a lot of people get into it kind of at surface level, but as you see more of what Joker did to Harley to essentially turn her into Harley Quinn. You're
Well,
like,
yeah,
oh,
it's complete manipulation.
But
Yeah.
what I see, what I see more in Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, even though they are heroes in new DC timeline, I do see more of that Bonnie and Clyde aspect where if they were to rob a bank, they would do it together. One wouldn't force the other one to do it.
Right. They're kind of in cahoots. But
Yeah.
he turned her kind of like, I guess, to the criminal,
Mhm.
her criminal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do any of you guys read Invincible or read Invincible?
I read
Tell
the
us about it.
first volume.
First
yeah.
volume, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Adam and Eve is another couple in there that I really like,
Yeah.
romantic-wise. So I know the
Why?
TV show's starting like what, next month?
Right.
Okay, so why do you like them?
They actually because they ended the story, and I liked them because it was kind of like they got together, Invincible and Adam and Eve, and then they didn't, and then they eventually. It was just like when they were together, it was just kind of like they stuck together and eventually had a family. So it actually most comics felt like a natural course of like a relationship. Like, yeah, we're together, we're stick together, growing a family, and then they eventually he quits the superhero business, and there's more to the story. Now I'm not giving that much away, and then they settle down. Which I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then they followed through with the whole romantic sort of situation. There was no real drama afterwards. They were together and kind of stayed together.
You follow their life and career of like a healthy relationship in real time.
Exactly.
They
That
don't-
was a little different for
Yeah.
superheroes.
They don't have to unage your characters for 50 years and figure out new ways to inject drama.
Right.
Oh, Miracle Man and Big Barda.
That was my next one. Yeah. Miracle Man and Big Barda.
I think that's one of the the one that has the most humor because Miracle Man just gives zero like any kind of care to the way Darkseid thinks about him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
like Big Barda.
Yeah.
I think she kicks ass myself, but
I don't think Miracle Man gets as much credit as he should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
know
also
Big Barda. I didn't know they were a couple. I didn't know that. But then again, I read very intermittently. I
Didn't
read
they
whatever I
have a
get from the
kid?
library.
They had a kid in the Tom King run, didn't they?
I don't know.
think
I
they-
just always liked it because she was definitely not the submissive type. They had either an equal relationship or she was actually the dominant one in the couple. I thought. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know
I'm not
much
too
about
familiar.
them.
Read that
Yeah,
one.
I'm not too super familiar with them, so I couldn't. either way.
Actually, in most cases, yes, she was probably the more dominant because she was the more take charge personality. The Miracle Man was. Miracle Man is definitely more. Let me analyze the situation and see how best to take care of it.
She was just like, let's smash them. All right. How about Peter Parker and Mary Jane? Like them or not? Or did you prefer Gwen Stacy?
I am a Gwen Stacy ride or
Yeah.
die.
I was kind of more of a Gwen Stacy.
But yeah,
Um,
and we don't acknowledge the Norman Osborn retcon.
Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy?
That was
Mary Jane?
there's a weird retcon that happened fairly recent timeline where Gwen Stacy had more or less an affair with Norman Osborn while she's with Peter, and I don't think I know anyone who has read any Marvel comics that actually gives that run any sort of credit. But
There's another one that's on the list of the most hated romances is Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn.
yeah, but Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, I mean, they were just too perfect, if that makes sense. It was great because you're like, oh, our boy Pete's, he has something great in his life, and then it gets stolen, and it's the opposite resolve in making it a permanent relationship and then trying to find ways to inject drama or change something. Like, it's within his grasp, and then it's resolved by taking it away forever. And if you're doing it, I mean, as long as characters die in comics, but
Yeah, they always come back.
yeah, but as far as like having a relationship resolve in permanence, but still have a fond memory or have some sort of long term impact, I feel like that was one of the best examples. But I don't think anyone can do it now since it has already happened, and everyone would just immediately think, "Oh, this is derivative of Gwen Stacy."
So why was, when you put the two of them up together, MJ and Gwen Stacy, what made Gwen Stacy more attractive as a storyline than MJ for a love interest? Was MJ just boring?
MJ just seemed, I mean,
Tempest has a thing for blondes.
well, I won't say you're wrong, but as MJ got more developed, I don't know if it's just like the writer at the time, but she ended up developing more toxic traits, or just developed in such a way that it became more of a, and not in a way that you get the therapy storyline. It was the she just ended up becoming either the damsel in distress recurring, or she became the antagonist to Peter trying to go out and be Spider-Man. And it ended up just serving to kind of annoy readers in the comic rather than having them root for her character to do stuff. They wanted her to stop doing stuff. They wanted her to become a non-character because the way her character developed was in a way that felt unnatural for where they were heading. And so the character didn't serve the plot didn't serve the character, and it just kind of felt weird at a time. They have since kind of made things better, especially post House of M. But at the time, it just... Whereas when Gwen Stacy developed, she seemed to develop in a way that made more sense for working alongside Peter as opposed to working against him. And so... And I haven't read too much of Mary Jane's relationship with Peter since... that kind of turned me off. So I assume they did something to make her more of a character that isn't a semi-antagonist.
A little bit too abrasive?
Wasn't necessarily that her character was abrasive, it's just that she took actions contrary to character and in a way ended up doing more damage to the relationship with Peter. As opposed to Gwen, in my opinion.
All right. Hank Pym as Ant-Man and the Wasp.
All right.
I only know their relationship. I read the Ultimates. That's the one, and that was a rocky relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like an abuser in that one.
He's
I don't know if
an
he is
abuser,
in real.
Yeah, and in main timeline too, he is to the point where I think he has not really been brought into any stuff recurring. He's just stayed old Hank most of the time, and they've stuck with Scott Lang a lot because Hank's character is not just abusive towards Wasp, but abusive towards everyone. And so when you also put a character who people like as much as a Wasp in that thing, you're like, why is he a hero? He doesn't feel like it. He feels like he's much more of a detriment to the people in his life.
Anybody else? Yeah, I think they brought in Scott Lang to fix the situation.
Yeah.
Kind of, break it out a little bit. So anyone here watch watch Robotech when they were a kid?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what did you think, Lisa Hayes or Min May?
Min May.
Ma-
Although she was
really?
annoying. She was annoying. I'll give her that.
Really, you're the first. Most people go Lisa Hayes. I'm a Lisa Hayes person. You thought Lisa was annoying?
Yeah. No, I thought Min May was annoying, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
liked her better. Does that
But-
make sense? She was annoying, but I liked her.
Yeah, she was. She was supposed to be like
She was
super young.
cooler.
She was. She was the rock star, whatever. And at the end, I
Yeah.
did think it was funny at the very end when the world's basically being destroyed. He's like, "Sorry, babe, we got to break up." I'm like, "Why you guys just all hug together? I mean, you're all gonna die, you know?"
hmm
Like, no. And I think he ended up marrying Lisa Hayes and like later after the series and stuff later on. But yeah, you're the first. I have a friend who just like every time I bring up Min May, he's just like, no. She just hates her with passion. I'm like, poor Min May. She's not that bad.
Yeah, I used to try to figure out how to sing her songs when she doesn't sing in English, and it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that was kind of when I was growing up. That was a classic love triangle. I think when I watched cartoons was the Robotech, Min May, Lisa Hayes.
It was a good poll. I thought it was.
It was.
interesting.
I can't think of any others. I think in the comic books wasn't like Snake Eyes and Scarlet like a couple. I don't think they were.
I know the Baroness and Deathstroke was.
Yeah.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about Juggernaut and She-Hulk?
Was they actually
Yeah.
a couple? Seriously?
I know She-Hulk and Thor had a fling, and
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, that they did. But yeah, this
Yeah.
was
that
the.
one was Stevie.
Yeah. But yeah. Wait, was that before or after Juggernaut lost the Demon Stone?
I think that was.
I mean, I would think like, at least they can handle each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, right. But I mean, also it's super because She-Hulk is also incredibly well educated.
Yeah, and Juggernaut's just like basically
He's
like
just a boy from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He's just a boy from Brooklyn.
He's a boy from
Very much
Brooklyn
an odd couple.
who picked up a Demon Stone. Is like, I am big now, and nothing can stop me.
what was he a full brother or step brother? The Xavier, wasn't he a full brother?
Step.
Step brother. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I think in the same vein, at a later time though, was the possibility, which is currently ongoing, of the Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and Eddie Brock as Venom. Now a hero, and
Really?
so now since Annie ended up leaving Eddie after they had their kid, and Eddie's now a single dad and looks very rugged all the time because his main thing is he just always dies and nearly gets beaten up whenever he deals with, because all of his enemies now are so much more powerful than him, and he's like, I don't know how I'm doing this. But Carol's super into that rugged, nearly like half dead look, apparently. So so every time he walks into a like Avengers mansion or whatever, Carol's like, hey Eddie, you're looking real good. I like that beard. So She-Hulk is now just trying to like get Carol in the back room, like, no, stop thirsting over him. So that's the same kind of tension where it's at UST, but it's in such an adorable way where you want to see it happen, but also you just want to see the jokes continue on for so long.
Right, and then trying to get together.
Yeah.
Well, then Carol Danvers like date Tony Stark for a while or something, or was it Captain
Rhodey.
America?
It was Rhodey, yeah.
Rhodey. She was
okay.
in love with Rhodey.
That was War Machine, right?
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, okay.
And then she ended up dating Star-Lord for a bit. And now she's single and thirsting after Eddie.
I did not know that.
On to the next conquest.
Symbiote.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, here's one that will definitely squick you. If you don't know what squick is, it's like
Yeah.
Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Quicksilver.
Oh.
The
They're brother and
incest.
sister.
Yeah.
That's not good.
It's not.
I know. Was that main timeline or alternate timeline?
That was the first timeline.
Yeah.
I always thought
That
it
was-
was funny. No one brought that up with Magneto. Hey, Magneto, your kids are like, like
Knocking
get
boots.
together. They're not my kids. That's why he doesn't talk about it. Maybe I don't know.
Oh, right. Because okay, so I remember because they had to do that whole thing where they did the weird thing that you instead of just wiping it under the carpet, which you should do, just say, okay, that never happened. That was alternate timeline,
Yeah.
whatever. It's comics. We can do whatever we want. They tried to justify it because they had a whole plot line where they found out that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were not in fact actually Magneto's kids. They were like separate test tube babies.
Doesn't matter.
It's like,
Not
but no.
easy.
I think the timeline that they did that in, they were just like toxically codependent
Yeah.
upon each other.
There's a part of me I wondered why they killed Quicksilver in that Avengers movie. That's probably more because the Quicksilver is an X-Men. But you wonder if look, if we just kill him off really quick, we don't have to worry about the whole incest storyline.
Have you watched WandaVision yet?
No, I don't. You could go ahead and tell me all you want. I don't.
Well, I don't know if we're at the I don't know if we're at the week-long spoiler roll yet. But
the new episode just came out Friday.
Yeah.
Came out Friday.
More than one of them.
But if you're I'll point this out. If you were to go to Marvel or Disney Plus in the Marvel section now, where you have the canon Marvel movies, they now have what's listed as Legacy Marvel, which has X1, X2, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse, as well as the Fantastic Four movies, right next to the current MCU.
That's weird.
Legacy. I guess just Legacy is non-MCU movies, I guess.
Prior to Iron Man 1, probably.
Or they are. The way they did is when they reacquired Edward Norton Hulk. That's technically the first movie in the MCU, even though it's not treated as such. Yeah. To the point, even I think they even mentioned some stuff from Ang Lee's Hulk, which is criminally underrated.
Yeah. I actually liked that one. I know nobody liked that.
Yeah,
I thought it was cool.
But so now that they've reacquired these titles and they've put them in the same directory as the MCU, and they have TV shows going up in that same directory, some characters are cast, and with the getting I don't think it was planned when they killed off Quicksilver in Ultron, but going into Infinity War, their acquisition of Fox is already planned and as they were negotiating. So things have been planned since and have been further developed in the TV shows.
Okay.
Yes, and it's awesome.
It's great.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
I hopefully avoided spoilers for the viewing audience.
No, I have Disney Plus. I didn't realize that I could get the Legacy movies. I haven't looked that up.
All right, I have one.
Okay.
And I'm gonna see how people work around it because it's an image couple. Susie and John.
Susie and John.
Something R-rated criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. I never read that comic, but I heard it's supposed to be really good.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
What do you like about
it? Apparently, a certain act can cause time to stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
And
that makes time stop?
When a man loves a woman, they freeze time and go commit crime.
Yeah, they go commit crime.
Okay.
I've heard of it. The concept is a weird concept, to be sure.
I'm sure many men would love to freeze time at that specific point, but
right. Well, she also has that power, so it's
they both do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when they do it together, it's amplified.
So do they have a certain amount of time that they have to, or this?
Yes. Yeah. Is it 40 minutes or something like that?
That's not much time to cause a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It depends on where you do it, I suppose. If you do it in the
and
alley,
it's not this. It's not the act, but it's that one thing that happens that women say that, or some women have said. Let me rephrase that. They've never had.
But yeah, once that moment happens, they have the timer starts, and they have until to go out and commit crime.
But why crime?
That's
strange. Well, it's
that's part of the story. I mean,
who came up with this?
Somebody who actually got Image the puppet.
I know.
Who's the writer? Who's the writer?
I don't know. Was it Steen, the perpetrator of certain Tantric acts?
I can't remember. Is the series done or is it still going?
I believe it's done.
Is it?
You can get. Let me see here. I always do my shows with Comixology open in the background because it's great for research.
Do you want to see some coloring? I finally finished
Yeah.
drawing
Yeah.
a page.
I
Yes,
have a
please.
screen. I had the screen share on. I think for that anyone, multiple participants can share simultaneously. So I'd assume you can probably try to share.
I can try.
Yeah.
It was written by Matt Fraction, and it ran
Chip. And it
2014.
was illustrated by Chip.
I don't know.
Is
Open
Cookie.
system preferences. Oh shoot.
So why don't you think anybody like Batman just never seems destined to settle down? I mean, yeah, there's Selena Kyle,
Yeah.
He
And-
almost married.
but he never ever. He's like a lone wolf. He never
because
really
crime
ever.
never sleeps, Barbara.
Well, you would think if anybody would understand, Selena Kyle would,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Batwoman, or somebody, you
Mhm.
know.
Or
I thought
what's
so.
her name? What's her name? Crap. Damien's mom.
Oh, the not Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talia. Is it Talia?
Talia?
Yeah, Talia.
Yeah.
Hasn't he killed her
Actually,
like twice?
she'd understand more than Selena would, actually.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the main things I always go to with Batman storylines is the fact that he is a self-destructive person. And so
Yeah.
I think that they always try to play that into his relationships, that even though he would get someone like Selena Kyle or Talia, even people who you imagine it'd be very hard to do something that would shock them into ending your relationship, you somehow managed to do it.
He
Yeah.
also always self-sabotages his relationships.
Mhm.
Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
So were there any couples that you guys that had sexual tension but you hoped would not get together because you didn't think there would be a match?
Wow.
I mean,
I
well,
think
not so much that
I
there wouldn't
think-
be a match, but Iron Man, Tony Stark, and Pepper Potts, there's that power dynamic is awkward.
this is a non-comic one, but I never wanted Scully to get together with Mulder, even though they did. I don't know why. I just always liked them better as just working professionals.
But they,
There
And-
was a perfect example of a long-running
there you go.
series
yeah,
I made
that
it
had
through.
that had the unresolved sexual tension until like the
And
last episode.
the last episode, and then I think in one of the movies they showed them living together,
yeah.
and then they break up. So it was like even remote relationship was like very minor. The other one that was classic when I was growing up. Did you guys ever watch Northern Exposure at all?
Mhm.
No. Okay. Yeah. That was another one that was Joel and Maggie, and that show was another one that was a big like. Are they not? And then when they finally got together, they did get them together, and then they were such fire and ice that they eventually kind of. But strangely enough, the guy who was part of that show left, and they kind of destroyed the show. So it was almost like once they resolved the sexual tension and brought in somebody else to continue the show just died.
Mhm.
Which is weird. Like you would think, like with X-Files, like if you get rid of the sexual tension, I still think X-Files would succeed. Other shows, but are there certain shows that once you resolve that sexual tension, is the show over?
It
even though it's
jumps the
about-
shark.
Yeah. I don't know.
In Lord of the Rings, if you read the original books, there isn't a lot of romance because it
Yeah,
was
the
written in a
movies-
time. Yeah, it was written in a time when it was more misogynistic and women weren't that powerful.
Mhm.
But they actually changed the movie to bring in romantic elements and couples, and
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of personally I didn't like that.
I
Interesting.
think that Aragorn and the elf lady,
Aelwyn.
Erwin, What was the other ones? When didn't they do one in the Hobbit? Oh yeah, the little dwarf guy. And
Oh,
the
that
elf
that
lady.
was weird.
Yeah, but that wasn't in the books. I mean,
No.
most of that stuff was all just made up for the movie.
Yeah, it was made up for the movie, and I'm a purist. I want to stick to the books, and they were bringing that in to make a statement, I suppose, to empower women. And I'm all for empowering women. Don't get me wrong, because I mean, I'm a woman and everything, but I'm also a purist, and I didn't believe in changing the book just to be PC. I don't know. That would probably make
I
I'll
agree
probably
with
get
you on
hate
that.
mail. I'll probably get hate mail for that, but
I can
No, I
send you hate
totally
mail if
agree
you
with
want.
you. It's not necessary to change it.
Yeah.
You get changing problematic elements, but I don't know if there's anything that's like really problematic about the Lord of the Rings, because it was just guys go off and die and hobbits do
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, if there was like serious racism or something like that in it, that's one thing. But bringing in a female just to throw in a female doesn't make sense to me.
It almost gets
Yeah.
I liked Eowyn, but there are certain elements where like you see that happen and it becomes more of a token character.
Yeah, that's just that. That's what I felt kind of
Yeah.
insulted.
Yeah.
Strange enough, I have two friends that actually think the movies did better than the books, and they've read the. And I don't know. I've never read the books, but I know it, enough about them. But it's weird. I see people like you who are like, no, the books, and then I have two friends like, no, I think the movies actually did better. And the
As
books,
somebody who
Go ahead.
As somebody who has been a token female, I feel insulted that they brought in token females. To
Tolkien. Is that a pun, Barb?
That is. Oh my god.
I was thinking when you first said it, I'm like, Tolkien. Oh, Tolkien. Got it.
It's like, see, we have a female artist. So I've been there, and it's kind of insulting to bring it in. I would have preferred if they would have stuck to the original script.
Yeah, I at least like that they gave them agency in their own choices to make.
There you go.
I mean, Eowyn, and I forgot her name. The one from the Rohirrim. Because her motivation was her motivation wasn't to get with Aragorn. He was an attractive piece of man that walked into town one day. But her motivation was to do what she could to protect her home and family, because her family had just been killed.
And the book did have a female heroine. It's the one that killed. You couldn't be killed by any man. I'm not a man. So that was canon.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. But and she had a great agency, and then Eowyn also took the choice to buck her father's rules, to ride out on her own and go save the hobbits at the river. And so I like that they had choices to make. They weren't just, I am a woman here to serve Aragorn.
Yeah.
If they had just done that, I think it would have been especially heinous. But I can definitely see where your point is coming from, Barb.
They were added to plump it up, I think.
Yeah. There was we didn't see it in New Mutants, thankfully. But I also frequent a podcast called Unexplained, and we talked about representation in comics and how it's improved recently. But there is a concept in writing called the magical minority, where you have a character from a marginalized group show up just to do one thing and they disappear, just so you can say you have representation. And how that happens with Cloak a lot. And recently he has been given storylines, but then some old Gen X and New Mutants type stuff, Cloak would show up, teleport people, and then he'd be gone. And like, is the black guy there just to do that?
Yeah, that's kind of, and it's so obvious too when they do that.
Yeah. And a different note, Tommy in chat says Betty and Jughead make a cute couple.
Are there couples that shouldn't hook up? That brings up that point. Are there couples in comics that should never hook up or should never have hooked up? I'm going to ask our participants what they think makes a good romance storyline, writing wise. Jump in.
It's funny. I kind of wrote I did write a romantic storyline into my Gollings comic I'm doing now, but it's kind of unrequited. If you read the story, you kind of understand why. But I'm trying to figure out when I wrote it, what did I think that was good about it? I don't know. Maybe it's just the idea that two people feel that way about each other, but then each one of them is kind of clueless. Like you, the reader, know, but they're kind of clueless that they feel that way about each other. I think is always fun until one of them finally figures it out or whatever.
Well, that's a very popular trope.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How about you guys?
I think for me, it always comes down to agency. I have to believe that both people are real characters, and that they're not. The romance doesn't just serve the plot; that there is genuine reason for them to be interested. Either they come in bearing the same sort of baggage as before, or as being roll-into characters, they have some sort of ancillary interest that they end up having in common. It's not just male lead, female lead must kiss because that is what you do as a writer. And it, they have to not just serve to save the other person. I have to believe that they're making choices outside of the obvious route. So it's not just one character serves to exist this other character in a romantic capacity, because then you also end up dealing with some weird power dynamic issues. And their romance does not just serve the plot, but rather serves their development further as growing and multidimensional characters. So,
Strange enough, I think a great example of that coming back to is X-Files again. Thinking both of them were kind of like that. I mean, they were both agents and they were both capable. They're both equal, and but their type of like relationship was more of like not so much romantic love, but it seemed to be more of like a love for like the safety of each other. I mean, there was kind of a romantic hint there, but more the fact, almost like a maybe brotherly sisterly love, like more of a family. But again, that I think I was thinking of examples we were talking about, Tim, and that's when it popped to mind that sort of they're both in it. I mean, they're both investigating these cases together as partners. And so the romance there is there in the background, but it's not the thing propelling the story. And not in the least. Yeah.
John? What do you like?
Oh.
What do you think makes a good? What do you think makes a good romance? I mean, there's so many tropes out there. There's the oblivious love, the unrequited love. There's the couple that one of them has a deep dark secret.
I'm going to be honest here. I don't really go looking for the romance stuff.
It's fine.
Be honest.
You just like action stuff.
Yeah.
But not necessarily just the action stuff. I mean, I don't know.
We need to get John a good Viking romance story. That's what will turn John to the dark side.
John is writing something.
Have I spilled the beans? I'm sorry.
Is her name Brunhilde?
Negative.
Oh, he's
Negative Ghost Rider.
Okay.
And I'm kind of thinking if something like that may be in there, but I haven't fully. I don't want to make it to where it's necessarily needed to further the plot.
Yeah.
I guess something that's there in the background that can kind of help assist the plot at times, but not like if it wasn't for the plot, this wouldn't be here.
Do you
Okay.
think one of the weaknesses about the Barbara, like Superman and Lois Lane, is that they were not equal, like power wise? I mean, that seems to be like like John. I was kind of wondering that too, John. Like Wonder
Mhm.
Woman and Superman seem more equal. Do you think that that sort of equal power or equal like
Well, you can see. Well, I guess it kind of goes back with that. I mean, you don't need. Okay, we got to insert Lois Lane into what's going on into the plot of this in order
right?
to, you know, remind everybody they have a relationship.
Yeah, kind of, that like the issue that I had mentioned is I see that a lot in Lois Lane, where Lois Lane exists to serve as Clark Kent's interest, and the romance serves to serve the plot. There's not a
Well,
whole.
she
Yeah.
also serves to give Superman a weakness, like an Achilles heel. I
But he's
mean,
also got brain. What is it? Brain. Mind control's a weakness,
Mm.
and magic's a weakness.
well, that sort of weakness in that somebody can get to him through her. I mean, Batman, I guess, kind of, but that
Yeah.
sort of like, I mean, I mean, the original, Richard
Superman
Donner,
generally cares for people
Mhm.
right?
because of the way he was raised. You don't need to have somebody he loves there in danger in order for him to sit there and make those same choices.
That's
Point.
that is yeah,
Okay, I like that.
that's actually a reference to like almost like a biblical story, which Superman very much is that kind of concept that is played
You
into
could,
that.
he wants to save the city. If you endanger citizens of the city, he's going to make choices that are similar to some of the same choices he would make trying to save Lois.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Richard Donner did a good job in the original one when, he saved everyone, but he couldn't save Lois. And
I
so
think we just said that the folks who write Superman with Lois Lane being the love interest are lazy.
In the chat, Tommy says Aunt May and Uncle Ben made a great couple till Peter got Ben killed. Thanks, Peter.
Anybody else in the chat have an opinion on romance? I think this is a really good point. I've never been a fan of Lois Lane. I've always thought she was a prop.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. She
I mean,
The
in-
world's supposed to be the prop, not the individual.
yeah.
Come to think of it, I'm actually trying to think of, can you think of any other superhero out there that does not have that immediate romantic connection with I mean, because Superman and Lois Lane, can you remember a time before Superman didn't have, I mean, it's always been Superman and Lois Lane, as far as I know. Now I'm trying to think of any other superhero that like, they're always one or the other. I mean, nobody can actually, even though she may be a prop, no one can imagine Superman without Lois Lane. I guess kind of almost like Batman or Batman.
When you think of Superman and Lois Lane in terms of what originally was brought out as, think about the time that Superman came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was very much, man, take care of everything, woman, here.
Yeah.
Right. But do you ever think the fact that since he was the first superhero and romance comics are popular, that the Lois Lane Superman thing was a way of tying into that success of the romance comic? Maybe a little by giving him a romance. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. I don't know if that was ever intentional. But considering he was a superhero, first kind of superhero romance comics are still big, kind of like, well, okay, we'll put a romance in here because romance comics sell, but he's still a superhero. I don't know.
Well, that period right after World War II, where they had this
Yeah.
huge, it was like almost a fairy tale period where you look back on it, you've got the 50s, the husband comes home with a pipe, darling, and she hands him a martini and all that stuff like that. It was the whole ideal of the perfect life. And the little woman taking care of bringing the slippers to the man and stuff like that was really played up. And I wonder if that played into the fact that they had to have a little woman.
Yeah, but she was pretty
luck.
fiercely independent in the comics, wasn't she? I mean,
Yeah.
even though she got into trouble and stuff and always had to be saved, she was pretty independent person. I don't know. I'm honestly just trying to think of any other superhero that you can think of them without Like, I mean, would you ever consider? I mean, would Lois Lane almost be like a sidekick? Is that Superman's sidekick? I don't know. That seems weird, but
I don't think
I
she
mean,
was empowered enough to be a sidekick.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I
It's
mean, they just announce another Lois Clark and Lois TV show.
Yeah, they're married.
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
I know.
I'd actually go as far as saying that you can take out the whole tension between Catwoman and Batman, and you can still make everything work just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Batman, I think, was always meant to be a loner.
hmm
You know,
Yeah.
there's
I mean,
other
like-
lone wolves. You know, Wolverine, I think, is a lone wolf.
Yeah. Well,
But he works good with the women, though, too.
he always comes in. I always like Wolverine because he always put despite being his backstory being a murder bot, he's always written in such a way to be a positive male character in the same presence as females. There's no power dynamic grabs. It's always just. But with him and Jubilee, he essentially becomes an adoptive dad or adoptive older
Same
brother.
thing with Shadowcat.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Shadowcat, and also especially with X-23, since she is more or less his daughter. Cloning is
Right.
weird, and he always is trying to put himself in harm's way, or at least be a positive role model, showing like you can do things certain ways. You can always try to put others above yourself, and at the same time, be the listening ear for these females in his life. And
He's
then,
always losing his love interest.
yeah, and then he
They
has
kill him off. They always kill him off.
Well, the only one he hasn't lost is, well, he hasn't had to kill off was Storm.
mhm.
Got
And-
together with Storm. When did this happen?
Yeah, I didn't know he was with Storm.
They got together for a little bit
Yeah.
at one point, and then they separated, and then after Storm left T'Challa
Mhm.
to get back with Wolverine.
Say, because was that Claremont or Lobel? Because that's an older one. I want to say it might be Lobel.
Yeah. Claremont,
I
I
can't
don't
remember. Honestly, I can't remember, but I remember the page where T'Challa's like, "Tell me it's not him,"
Yeah.
and the look of disdain is just.
The idea of anyone being with Wolverine almost doesn't make sense at surface value, because you got Wolverine, he's this stocky brawler dude who
Yeah.
his first response is to snick at someone, but
Yeah, but Storm grew
Yeah.
up on the streets, though.
yeah, but
So she connects really well with Wolverine.
yeah, and then we also see Wolverine's other side, the fact that he's been in so much war throughout his life that he wants to stop other people from having anything similar to his own experience. He is such a protector archetype that his cold front is just that, a front. He's actually very warm underneath, and Storm having that same sort of facade makes a really strong connection with that, in my opinion, too.
I think the other couple I liked the next from was Longshot and Dazzler. I always thought they were funny.
Huh.
Did you not know they were together?
No.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah,
never
we
knew
were
that?
together
Oh
for a
yeah.
short period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Longshot and
think-
Dazzler
yeah.
were together for a good while.
Yeah.
Here's one that caught everybody off guard, though. It was it the late '90s, early 2000s when they did this? Shatterstar and Richter.
Oh yeah. I remember
Yeah.
that.
Nobody's mentioned Tony Stark, my favorite guy.
Well, I
That's
kind of
what
mentioned
we
that.
Playboy.
We
I kind of mentioned that the ship that's always kind of weird to me is Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, while she's working at his company. I was like, that's a weird power dynamic. I have issues with this.
That is a little bit. He's been with the Wasp,
Yeah.
but I mean he's the Playboy of,
Mhm.
of comics, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's the Bruce Wayne of Marvel. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the.
oh, do I notice a little sarcasm there?
So on the Unexplained podcast is on. We kind of mentioned this briefly, but Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne have the same superpower, which is planning and money. But Tony
Yeah.
Stark also has
Yeah.
lasers, so therefore he wins. But
I
And
think he's more
robots.
charming.
yeah,
And robots. I think he's more charming too.
yeah.
He's
But
good.
I also saw Tony Stark as kind of the same problem with Bruce Wayne in terms of relationships is that he is a self-sabotaging character,
Hmm.
which we saw a lot of in the Demon in the Bottle episode series or run.
Yeah.
Ugh. But
There's
then
a lot of
us,
self-hatred.
there's a lot of self-hatred, and also in International and Superior Iron Man, it was just you saw him get so full of himself, but in all the entire time he's just drinking himself into a grave behind all that.
There's a
And
lot more arrogance you get with Tony Stark
Yeah.
than you get with Bruce.
This is true. He's a much more, I mean, I think they're both deeply, deeply flawed characters,
yeah,
you know, with a lot of baggage.
yeah,
But I think Bruce is angrier about it, and Tony is more self-hating about
yeah.
it.
And I think that's also in terms of bromances. I think that also works really well with his relationship with Cap, whereas Cap is so righteous to the point of being self-righteous, whereas Tony is self-hatred hid underneath arrogance. You always get the point where Cap is trying to convince Tony to become the hero that he really is, and not give in to his self-hate, whereas Tony's will yell at Cap to stop being so full of himself and
Self-righteous.
take the either the more pragmatic or the more responsible approach rather than the optimistic or virtuous approach.
And I think you've hit on another aspect of romance, and that's the bromance. And I love bromance.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore bromance. It's one of my favorite tropes.
Yeah.
The Cap and Iron Man and
Bromance, what? I don't think bromance, isn't it more like just like a really good friendship?
yeah, they're like very, very tight.
Yeah.
Starsky and
So-
Hutch, you know? The Starsky and Hutch of comics. I think that's I mean, guys can have an incredibly close relationship without being romantic. You know, I love romance, and I think it is a form of romance. It's you love that person, you love them like a brother. You would die for them.
I think
That's love.
I'm really looking forward to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, especially after the events of Secret Empire, where we saw that bromance really develop in the comics, and now seeing what that looked like on screen, especially with
I think it's hilarious.
yeah, with they're both great actors, so I'm very excited to see where that goes.
I mean, isn't romance love?
Yeah.
You'd die for this person. I mean, what higher form of love is there? Yeah, everybody goes,
Hey.
"Oh."
think you got
So,
Yeah.
what's some of the best bromances in comics?
Wolverine and
Robin.
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, Wolverine Nightcrawler. I'd also say I'm going to do a DC reference this time, but Red Hood and Arsenal. That's a newer one, and it's also very interesting to see because they're both very violent people.
Violent people.
But
Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's like one of the obvious ones.
Is that a
Peter
bromance? Is it?
Parker and Deadpool.
yeah,
Mm,
That's
a good one.
more in Deadpool's head.
True.
you get to see more of it. When they did the crossover. They included Punisher and Cable, and they're both very kind of tack a turn, just practical people at the time. But then Peter Parker and Deadpool were trying to bromance the relationship. I think this is during the Age of Strife. That was one of my favorite moments. It's just they were set up in Dimension M or whatever. Cable and Punisher had sniper positions, and Peter Parker and Deadpool come into fast food because they jumped dimensions. And they're like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" They're like, "Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's a good time, we're bros."
Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. I love those.
I love-
Those two.
God, that's what the DC Cinematic Universe messed up on, is they didn't start with the Booster Gold movie.
I know the Justice League when that run on Justice League with a JM, is it DeMatteis? Is that how you pronounce it? That was just brilliant run. And they were they were all living in like a big frat house, right?
Yeah.
And you had Ice and Fire and Ice and Booster and Blue Beetle and I can't remember who else, but that was love that run because they were all like in a big frat house and just being idiots.
And Tommy just backed up that Blue and Booster got relationship. Yeah.
And getting out of DC and Marvel, you've got Skywise and Cutter in the ElfQuest series.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there was some of my favorites. I'm trying to think of any others. Yeah, because you got to talking about Marvel and DC. I haven't. I think the X-Men is the only thing I read. I read some Avengers stuff, but like if you guys talk X-Men, I can do that. But beyond that, I
All right,
know
so
very
who's the-
little. I'm sorry.
That's right.
So who's the big bromance in X-Men?
Depends on who's alive at the moment. I think
It does kind of depend on who's alive.
I think right now,
Actually, and I think it's Wolverine and Nightcrawler's
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
over Nightcrawler's probably the best one, the longest running. Also, Wolverine Colossus at times. Right now, actually, see a really weird bromance between Xavier and Magneto, and
That's
also
been
Yeah.
a long-running one.
yeah, and then now with the Hickman run, where the mutant state of Krakoa, where now all the mutants have allied themselves and say like, all right, no more dead mutants. Now you see this really weird relationship where Xavier and Magneto are the fathers of a giant family that includes Mr. Sinister, Exodus, Apocalypse, and you're like, how does this work? Because comics. But it's really
The way
it's
they
for
got
fun.
it layered, it works.
It's I enjoy I enjoy when X-Men gets into the politics of establishing a mutant state. I like the Genosha storyline. I liked Planet M. It's all and this is so much fun for me. What's going on right now, but also I like how they set it up. They gave a lot of agency to Moira McTaggart, who admittedly in Lodwell's run was kind of just there to establish a school and be smoochy partners with Professor Xavier. But now all of everything they explained that everything that happened in the X-Men, all the reason they have had success recently is because of her. And they give her so much story, and I really appreciate giving Moira so much agency going into it.
You're talking about the Jonathan Hickman run?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that right
I-
there,
I-
and that explains a lot of the whole different alternate timelines that
Oh, yeah.
the X-Men have had too. So
See, I'm probably the only one that did not like that. Sorry, I liked Moira McTarget when she was human. I did not like the fact they made her a mutant, because it's error. Because she was a research scientist who worked with Xavier. She was a research scientist, and the Keeper's a research scientist. Like, no, she's a mutant. I'm like, okay.
but it adds another
Everybody's
layer.
a mutant.
Yeah.
What? Well, it just gets like everybody's with the X-Men. Like, are there any human contacts? No, they're all secretly mutants. Obviously, they're all mutants because everyone has to be a mutant.
Well, I think even though
Somebody sounds bitter.
I mean,
Yeah, I pretty much tossed the X-Men aside a little bit after Claremont's run. I like the Claremont's run, and then everything I've read so far, like I said, I did not like the X. I think it's pretty much when the X Gene came in. When the X Gene came in, I pretty much just tossed X-Men. I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm sorry. There was some sort of concept of genetics, and then they're like, no, there's one gene. It's like, okay, that's not how genetics works. And I know it's comic books, but still, I can't. No,
broke you.
sorry.
It's called suspension of disbelief.
and
It's not happening with me on that one.
well,
Sorry, it's just not gonna do it.
The nice thing is if you read a lot of Lodbell and then Brubaker, you even need to suspend your disbelief because they go super hard into like here's how genetic viruses work with the Apocalypse and Strife runs. Like ages ago, someone just started playing God of genetics, and then the Kree developed the. And there's a whole bunch of issues where it's just pop fiction science magazine.
Yeah, I've read. I think I read I'm not sure if I read Brubaker. I read the new X-Men that started getting a little bit. I don't know that I liked the X-Men to a point, and then I don't know. There were some things like I'm one of those people look, it doesn't have to be scientifically accurate, but sometimes you make stuff scientifically accurate. You actually make it much more interesting. There's many comics I've read. Appleseed is another one. Appleseed, when he wrote that, he studied SWAT tactics and SWAT techniques, And that makes that comic 1,000 times more interesting than any other action movie, because you actually see how these guys are trained, what they're doing, the way they do things. And so Appleseed has actually kind of ruined me for a lot of other action comics and movies, because every time I seem like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. Real life and actual reality and sticking to side things that works make things much more interesting than being like, no, it's comics. It's just, okay.
I have a tendency to do that too. I'm proofreading over the script for Divinity 3, and RA had some bad guys shooting an Uzi from a ridge over. And I'm like,
yeah,
you can't. An Uzi is a short range weapon. You have to have and I named off, a couple of Mossbergs or something like that. I can't remember the makes and models for a longer range. If you're going to use a Uzi, you got to get up a lot lot
Yeah.
Because I was raised in a family that likes guns.
I'm looking forward to the aftermarket critiques. I'm looking forward to the aftermarket critiques that AJ, John, and I will get on Wolf Hunter, because we have a lot of historical reference to vehicles and places in 1940 England during the Blitz, and someone's going to come and like, well, actually back then this thing would have had this here and not here, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I might get that.
There's always that, but at least if you're just a little. So you don't have to be. Yes,
I've done so much. I have bookmarked the book, database of historical law in England, right? I've read English legal code pertaining to 1940, right in a comic book.
I think it just makes it interesting. I think when people do their research, I think it can kind of push the believability of stuff a little bit more.
And that's why you need to have believable romances, because if any one of our partners just came in and is like,
from Mossberg,
I'm back from saving the world, now go make me dinner, it's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Strange enough, the book I'm working on for Silverline, I'm in the back of my head, and this will never be in the comic, but I'm all like, oh yeah, these guys in the future, so they'd be using caseless ammunition by this time in the future, and I'm just like, okay, and it wouldn't be ejected, and like I like stuff in the comics, no, but it just makes the characters much more interesting for me to design as a solo functioning unit, instead of like they have a gun. It's like, no, how would they actually function? How would technology expand into the future and do this? That's what I mean, strange enough, when I was in the because we're referencing a lot of aliens for this book, and that's what he said. I mean, and James Cameron does that stuff all the time. Like, they're like, yeah, the pulse rifles and aliens. Yeah, they used
Just don't do relationships like they did in Demo Man.
What?
Just don't do relationships like they did Demolition Man.
But he's like, yeah, I think the 32 millimeter pulse caseless ammunition for the pulse rifles isn't necessary for the movie. No, but it just shows that he's actually thinking, like, if they're in the future, this is how guns would eventually go. This is why in the Aliens movies you don't see any ejecting brass, because they don't have any brass. It's all caseless ammunition. So it's like that stuff is like me and my friend have sit there and contemplated how the actual smart guns work, because they don't seem to have any ammunition, and when they actually undo the ammunition in that one scene in Aliens, when he gets all the aliens, they pop this sort of magnetic. So we're saying that's probably not the ammunition. That's probably just the connector for the ammunition. The ammunition is probably stored somewhere in the back or in the gun somewhere, but we haven't. And I'm sure I can look this up and research it. But that kind of stuff is cool. Cameron does that all the time in his movies, which makes them 1,000 times more interesting.
You don't have to suspend your disbelief quite as much.
No. So, yeah, I don't know. So X-Men kind of went a little bit, because I was just thinking, like, yeah, if we did some really, but then again, I read the comic and this lady could control weather with her mind. So, I mean, what do I know? So, I mean, there's a sense of disbelief in that.
I mean, anytime we get anything with cape characters, you have to assume that things are just going to stop making sense at a certain point, and it's
more capes. No more capes. Never made sense to me in the first place.
Wait a minute, I don't think a lot of superheroes even have capes anymore.
No,
when I think they get rid of them.
They even reduced the amount of pouches.
They did.
Yeah.
But okay, that's it. I gotta bring it back.
Yeah, but when you have so much
Silverline,
when you have so much room to play with and kind of your other world building, you can spend so much time thinking about your relationships and how you can research and think about how your own romantic relationships, or how, like, if you have positive role models in life, how that relationship works, and draw that influence. I mean, the amount of time we spent researching guns or World War II history, you could spend thinking about how does the whole courting in Western culture or Eastern culture or your science fiction culture work? What are good manners?
Avatar.
Yeah, because those characters are going to have to still do that kind of stuff, even if it's not the main focus. That's the reason why Scott Summers is jokingly a terrible dater, and I don't understand how he's had 3 marriages. One of which being successful.
And actually, surprisingly, his brother is so much better.
Havoc is a nice person. He's just a nice person.
Yeah.
Unless you get him and Scott together.
And then, do they fight? I didn't think they fought that much, did they? Or they've actually...
They fought twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
Wasn't that was always a weird thing that their powers couldn't affect each other? I always thought that was such a weird concept.
No, because then it ends up just being a sibling brawl. And it looks...
Yeah.
So, yes, it makes sense.
So, yeah. It's funny. Because the way I did my romance in my comic, it's based on stuff that I've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, I'll have to pay special attention now when I read
Deep insights into Aaron's dating life.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite romances in comics is James Rhodes and Tony Stark. War Machine and Iron Man. They've been the best friends since college, and they've just always had each other's back. I just like that. Just like.
You mean Rhodes has always babysat?
That too. That too.
So what is, if there's bromances, what is the 2 best girlfriends? Is that just girlfriends? The 2 best friends that are female. Is there a term for that bromance? Is there another term?
Sisters. Sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. A sisterhood.
No, there's not one.
Let's say, well, it was Harley and Poison Ivy until they became an actual romance, and that's been great so far. But the one I can think of right now is probably either Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and probably America Chavez, or Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and America Chavez, especially after West Coast Avengers. They've had that same sort of sisterly relationship where they
sisterhood.
Yeah, they handle each other's hot-headedness at times, or they are there to support each other when Kate's questioning her skills as a new leader, when after Clint has to duck, or America has stuff happening with her romantic relationship and Kate has to be there for her.
Yeah.
Jubilee and X-23.
Yeah. Both with Father Wolverine.
I mean,
that's
I
the
think
reason why Jubilee took so special interest in X-23.
He just picks up strays, as I guess he goes.
Yeah. I think the entire island of Themyscira.
Yes.
I mean, that's
literally.
That would be like the ultimate sisterhood.
Yeah. This doesn't seem. I'm trying to think of like.
But you're right. You're right. There isn't a lot of examples of sisterhood as opposed to romances.
Yeah, because I'm actually trying to think of some.
Also, the stats on female leads or female heroes in the last 20 years compared to the 50 years before that or wherever. I think as we get more female heroes, I'm hoping to get more positive examples of that.
Harley Quinn and Power Girl.
Oh yeah.
See, I was gonna say
that was funny.
Diana and Donna Troy, but they're actually sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So
Fire and Ice.
Oh yeah, there was Wasn't that was DC, right?
Yeah.
Trying to think, even in ElfQuest, wasn't there like 2 the female elves that really got along together?
Well, there was Lita and Shen Shen were sisters.
But I thought there were like 2 other of like the
they all got along very well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My friend keeps giving me crap about the scene, and I think it was a 3rd book.
Yeah, they have
I let him read the story, and that's all he brought up. He's like, "You mean the one with the elves?" I'm like, "Yes, they all love each other. They
have a different view on sexuality."
Yes, and I was like, "Yes." So that's all he could get out of the story. I'm like, "Okay." So he still gives me crap about it. I'm like, whatever. And I didn't even remember the scene. When he told me, I'm like, I don't remember this. I read back and it was like, what, 2 panels or a panel?
I mean,
And then it was,
in
yeah.
Strangers in Paradise, before, oh gosh, now they're Francine and Kachu finally get together in the end. They've been best friends since high school. I mean,
Do you think it kind of ruined their relationship that they got together? Do you think it would have been better if they did not get together?
no, I like the fact that they're raising their kids together. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that was the ultimate goal in his storyline
Eventually,
anyway.
yeah.
Because we always knew that Kachu was in love with Francine, and Francine had to get there eventually through, all kinds of other things. But the entire series is based around, just like Supernatural, really, is based around this bond between two people. In Strangers in Paradise, it's the best friendship of these two girls, and that's the entire series is based around that. And in Supernatural, the entire series is based around the brotherly bond between Sammy and Dean. Sam and Dean,
Yeah, it's the thing is, do you think it ever? Because you're talking about a lot of the bromances. And a lot of the bromances, there's never any. If I remember, there's never been any inclination that there's any romantic aspect. With most of the sisters, there's always is there?
Well, I mean, one just recently kind of. Well, I mean, I think it broke. I think it's newer, and it has the record for being the first male same-sex couple on comic was Wiccan and Hulkling. For a while, they were just friends, and then they.
Oh no, because Shatterstar and Richter was before that.
Well, it's the first marriage to happen on. Because now they're.
He had what was it, North Star? Well, North Star
was married, but he never got. We never really saw his husband.
Yeah. Because I don't remember who he was even with. But it's funny because it seems like most of the sister relationships and really good female best friends usually have some sort of sexual tension or romantic tension, but a lot of the bromance don't. I kind of wonder why that.
Hello?
Male fragility and heteronormative.
That's what I'm thinking. I was just kind of wondering, like, because I'm thinking, I was thinking of like some of the sisters, and a lot of them, like you said, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I would think I'm like they're together, and I'm like, okay, well that.
Well, yeah, I think the one that doesn't really show any signs of that because I think one of them is still in a relationship. Yeah, is Magic and Kitty Pryde.
Okay.
Yeah. They've since they became friends after Ileana became Demon Queen.
And I would almost say Jean Grey and Storm. I think for a while there were very close.
Yeah.
I think that's probably because society can accept two women together easier than it can accept two men together. I have no problem with either one, but comic book readers, I tend to be more of the macho, type. So,
but it's just always so
totally
weird that
acceptable.
so many of the sister things have to eventually, like, well, we hope they get together, but none of the bromances, no one ever thinks of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a while for before Bobby Drake got his boo. They hinted to North Star and Bobby having had crushes on each other for a while.
Okay.
Until they found out North Star had a husband who has been hidden somewhere in Canada.
And I think it's been hinted at in comics too that Tony Stark is so hedonistic that he's bisexual. He doesn't care.
I believe it.
I kind of got that sense too. That when I've read his stuff, that he just like if it has a pulse sort of thing. It didn't really seem.
If it feels good, go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Here's one of those couples that nobody really thinks about, like at all. Is Apollo and Midnighter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No one thinks about that.
And they're not, and they're like two badasses.
Yeah.
And I think they started. I think they started out as a couple, if I'm not mistaken. In the Authority, I don't think they came together. I think they were already together when the story started, which was cool. I mean, it was an already established relationship. There was nothing leading up to it. Yeah, I always did like that.
Yeah,
I couldn't get into Mark Miller's run. That got a little like I liked the first story, and then the second authority I read that I'm like, a little too violent, Mark.
Mark Miller's definitely an acquired taste. I love it, but I also
I
love
like Mark Miller. I like there's some stuff I like in his, but there's some stuff where I'm like, wow, I didn't think I had a violence threshold. Mark has crossed that numerous times. Thank you.
I'm
So,
also super into like Warhammer 40k, so hyper violence is kind of my jam.
kind
Like,
of your jam, yeah.
yeah, the Wolf Hunter is actually kind of like a weird tone down for me. Being historical spy fiction, not science fiction with guys throwing hammers through each other's heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
had to
sounds
tone down a
fun.
couple of scenes in Divinity when RA wrote that. It's like, right, shoots him at point blank range. I'm like, can we do this off screen because this is supposed to be kind of a all ages.
Yeah, I do
You know-
manage to get someone's head on like dead center for at least one death a book though so far in the run, so that is kind of
Yeah,
that's hitting my threshold. That's hitting like, okay, I'm satisfied with this. I've had someone die point blank.
Oh yeah, there's
I-
definitely violence in
Yeah.
Divinity. I just don't want it to be
Yeah.
so violent
Mhm.
that parents are going, oh,
Oh, what's my
dear."
child reading? I don't know, my
Yes.
mother bought me Venom and
I'm trying to
anti-venom.
keep it PG,
Yeah.
but not R.
You're not gonna go the hard R.
Yeah,
No,
no.
not
I'm
hard
trying to
R.
think. Yeah, there's a few comics that have gone. Saga was
Yeah.
one that
Saga,
got
yeah.
me because it was just it was the story is okay, but some of the scenes just I don't mind scenes like that if they're context of the story, but I find it really weird when people just throw in random scenes like that
Mhm.
for no apparent reason because they can. It doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Yeah, that's my issue
Um,
with the Game of Thrones TV shows as opposed to the books. Like the
Yeah,
books, they all they like, okay, here's like two sentences mentioning what's happening, and then we're going to expose from this point on. Whereas the TV
Right.
show, it's just and hard cut.
And
It's
yeah, it was the the TV show that got to me where it's like they put all the money into these gory shots and other stuff, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, I don't really grasp. I think there's a way to show intense violence with having like either off screen or hinting at it,
I think,
and of
well,
course,
yeah,
I mean most
yeah. The thing is just my BFA talking, but uh, everything has to in some way serve the character or the plot. So I am a fan of hyper
right,
violence, but what is that progressing forward? What change is happening at the top of the page to the bottom of the page?
right,
If it's a moment like where Zemo beheads a random Shield agent in order to cause an emotional change in Cap, that's great.
yeah, yeah,
But if
exactly,
it's just Zemo going around slashing people and we don't have any change happening, then it can be cool eye candy, but you're not developing anything. There's no story happening, and you're essentially just giving your artist a exercise in splatter physics. You're not telling a story.
right. You're not telling this. Strange enough, that one of the comics that was just brutally violent was that Invincible comic, and I
Mhm.
really did. You finish reading the whole thing, Tim?
I've read the first volume. I'm planning on going through and reading it before the Amazon show.
Okay, because if you like hyper violence,
Yeah.
have fun. This gets, but it actually does serve a concept of the story that
Yeah.
but yeah, for a superhero story, oh my
Mhm.
god, yeah, they just they
Yeah.
go through some intense stuff in that,
Yeah.
and because that's the first thing when I heard they were animating it, I'm like, are they gonna keep all that stuff? And apparently from the trailer,
They
I think
better.
they are.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, one of my favorite things that has both hyperviolence and a strong strong relationship that doesn't get served anywhere else. I would like to see it progress more, but I get why they didn't. Is a short run on X Force called Sex and Violence that had a relationship between Wolverine and Domino, and is also during Age of Apocalypse Part 2. And
is this
so,
after the comics code was lifted?
I think it was. I'm not sure if it was after it was lifted or at the time where Marvel just said we're ignoring it.
Yeah.
But it was There's a lot of violence happening. There was a lot, but there was such a short, um, essentially dump of comic compared to the year-long story they're telling, that the story got so condensed that the violence, the relationships, the sex, it all served to either expose or develop this greater part of the story because they're telling this part of it. And I think that was a really good showcasing of condensing and having all of your different elements serve the plot.
And do you think regular comics, I mean, normal mainstream comics have become more risque?
I
I
do.
think media has in general.
Yeah, I
We
think they've
just
been
brought
pushing
we
it.
did bring up a book called Sex Criminals, right?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, it's that's one of my I don't know, I can't remember who I was talking this about. It's
I
like
think
sometimes it feels like a little bit like some of the books are written or drawn by people just out of high school, not in a bad way. And then in other words, you can't do this stuff. Now we're out of high school. Now we've graduated to adulthood. So now I get to do everything. And so they just drop violence and sex and just everywhere. And I'm just like, there's no real rhyme or reason. Like, we can draw this now. Like, woohoo. And they just go,
Isn't there a lot of that going on in manga?
no, not strangely enough. Well, there's a certain
There's
genre
a
of
subgenre.
manga. There's a genre, but yeah, but not. I
Right.
mean, I'm trying to think.
I
Not-
mean, yeah, because
And there's always been underground comics. And
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
done
oh,
a
yeah,
couple.
yeah,
yeah.
you
I
know,
mean,
but in mainstream,
yeah.
I think they're getting much more risque.
Yeah, I think, and I think also it's kind of a media and in general thing.
It
Yeah.
is.
But it's almost everything comes in waves. Because if you look at Shakespearean writing as well as the other prose published at the time,
Mhm.
there is a ongoing joke in any theater troupe, which is count how many. That's after 10. Penis jokes are in each Shakespearean play, or how many times they reference other things. And then we enter into the puritanical era after that. The 1800s, we got the. I'm going into. Welcome to your masterclass in literature. We go into the epistolary becomes popular, and we get a lot of romantic letter style stories. One such, published out of Germany, is about a man's writing unrequited love letters in epistolary format, and the book ends with him essentially shooting himself with his dueling gun, and they're doing historical consensus afterwards. They found that there was actually a rise of suicides in Europe after that book came out, and then we enter into early 90s or 1900s, and the classical value, and then the Greatest Generation timeline, where everything became more American Dream and everything like that. And then 70s onward, we get the sexual revolution. 80s, we get the popularization of drug use. 90s become more violence and stuff. And now we're seeing that the last 50 decades are now kind of all intertwined in storytelling.
Well, we're way behind European television in what they're willing to go much farther than we are. We're more
they're not as
pure.
uptight.
Yeah, we are much more puritanical
Yeah.
in the
But
U.S.
they're
than
much more. They don't see it as shocking over
no, it's perfectly normal over there.
now.
They're
Well,
like, that's the
strangely enough,
body.
not Germany. Now, Germany will censor a lot of violence.
Yeah.
So when it comes to violence on TV, America is still much more violent than most shows. But as far as like romance and sexual stuff,
what they'll
they're much more.
body
It's like
parts that they'll show.
Yeah.
You still can't see, upper nudity here on American TV, but you see it on European TV all the time.
Yeah. And they don't think it's like just like a guy taking his shirt off.
Yeah.
It's just it's not even phased. Because I remember there's been a few video games that have come out that were violent, and I know a lot of Germany censored or outright banned them. So I know there's certain countries that, and it's weird because America, like, the more violent it is, woohoo, free, so it just goes off. But
well,
John Wick.
We have I do love John Wick, but we do have I think it has so much to do with like kind of our gun culture has influenced certain things. But if you look at the 1600s, when America and Europe developed separate art identities, we were in the middle of essentially our puritanical culture, leading into the witch hunts. Whereas in Europe, they had the Renaissance and a whole bunch of full body art and everything leading into the Enlightenment. So it's two separate identities formed, and I think historically you're kind of seeing as both get a little more liberated in ways where weird lines are being drawn for each.
Michelangelo and his lovely boys.
Well, even today, modern day, I mean, you're looking at the 70s, you had the summer of free love or whatever, and then you get into the much more conservative 80s. Excuse me, going into the 90s and into the year, 2000, now the hookup culture I see is a sort of a digital version of the sort of free love movement in a way.
Yeah.
We've taken that online. So it does kind of go up and down, but it will come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny that but I don't know if they call it free love, but yeah, that stuff I like Tim does, like trends that you see that go through decades where things like no bad, then it comes back, then it goes, and every time it comes back, like the hookup culture is new, and I was like, no, this stuff's been going through human history throughout, the inception of human.
Let me tell you about the Greeks.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to me to look at those macro sort of waves that cut through human history.
Yep.
So,
Well, we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. So I'm going to go through and ask everybody to tell the audience where they can find you. So why don't we start with Aaron?
you mean like my address and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Your phone number.
And my GPS, GPS
The
unit.
last three on the back of your credit card.
All right.
Yeah. No, you can find me on Facebook under Humphreys Illustration. I think that's where my name's spelled up there as an RES at the end. Or my name, Aaron. Instagram at AOH3810. And my webtoons, I have my Goblins, which I hopefully will start posting issue 10. I'm like I'm like 3 pages away from being done with 10, so I'm getting down there. And I'm snowed in just like Tim is.
Yeah. Oh well, we're not snowed in yet, but we lost power all of yesterday. And
We never lost
Where are
power.
you at, Tim?
I'm in
Salem.
Salem, Oregon. Yeah. So I'm
He's
like
actually almost an hour away.
I'm
from
like
me.
an hour away from Aaron. Yeah.
I say I'm in Memphis, and we're about snowed in here.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
you
I
told
am
me
in
you got hit.
Wisconsin. I'm in Wisconsin, and it's 30 below.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you always have snow. I mean, Barb's like, you guys have snow up there? Wow.
Yeah. All right, Tim.
Like Aaron said, I am in Oregon, and I am on all the social medias at TimTKWriter. I am on TikTok at Tim Doesn't TikTok. I am on Twitch at AgroBacon, where I will be going live later tonight. You can also catch me on the Silverline Comics website with the Craft series, and later this year with the release of Wolf Hunter.
All right. How about you, John?
You can find me all over the interwebs. You can find John Martin or Artistic Viking or the Viking Prince Voltan. Somewhere on the internet, you'll find me that way. I will say tomorrow I am doing my little hangout and draw with Drew Moss, which is going to be quite fun. He's another awesome artist. Of course, last week I did it with Peter Clinton.
That guy's a punk.
Did not make it tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on him about that.
Yeah. So it's going to start at 9:00 Central Time.
Mhm.
So come check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
All right, how about you, Roberta?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook under Roby Conroy. And that's about it for now, because I'm trying to figure out if I should start a DeviantArt page. What do you think?
I have one.
Yeah. I'm the horrible. You're talking to somebody like I started him and then forget about him. I am horrible at forgetting things
Yeah,
to put stuff on, and then I'm like, oh wait, that was
I don't update mine very often, but I do try to go in there about every few months and upload a bunch of new stuff. And I use it as a portfolio, an online portfolio, just of my works. So
It looks really inspiring.
Yeah.
Many people's
Are you
work.
looking for like a portfolio site, Roberta? Like someplace to post your artwork, or
Somewhere more fun than, I guess, because I didn't want to use Instagram for that.
Right.
I'm trying to
I'd
figure
say
out the
go
real
for it.
function of
I
Instagram.
think DeviantArt is probably one of the better ones in terms of mixing just the power of tools for hosting your own content as well as the social aspect of it. There's a lot of recommendation.
Bill Reinhold has his portfolio on there, so I think you could put yours on there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of, you can find me under Barbara Kalberg. on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt. So, all right. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope I did half as well as Roland. He's more personable, but why don't you take us out, Tim? And everybody say, make
Make
mine
mine
silver.